So, I mean, I guess let me start with kind of my journey here is I left Bloomberg. So I was doing API governance at Bloomberg
Mm,
here in New York City. And I left and I'd been radio silent for over a year since I left
mm,
Postman, and I didn't do anything publicly. I really didn't pay attention to what was going on. I came out and there's just this shitstorm AI noise
yeah,
craziness. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I mean, to full disclosures, I'm pretty anti-AI, so
yeah.
I'm
I
pretty
got that
pretty full
impression.
blown. The just the labor, the environmental, the copyright.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overarching issues that are like, make it kind of untenable for me at a large scale. With that said, I treat it like the automobile is like I don't own a car anymore, and I hate driving, but I've spent most of my life in a car to support my career, my job. I still have to get in a car. And so I approached it like that. And I was doing a startup when I left. I did a startup for a year,
Mm,
and I was the one person sales, go to market and sales. And so I needed to figure things out. And Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini were my coworkers, and I started just figuring things out. And I structured and set it up the best that I could. It wasn't a fit, so I left after a year. But I'm back. I'm building APIs.io, which is my search engine, and then continuing doing API Evangelist. But again, one person show when it comes to all the marketing and the sales, and I am actually trying to have a suite of products I'm developing that are API led, and and so I'm building, how I market and reconciling with, well, how do I maintain the API evangelist voice, which, as you know, is very, very opinionated and very, very distinct. But how do I scale what I do? How do I stay afloat in all the noise?
mm,
And I'm using Claude heavily in VS Code, and I have a pretty
mm,
sophisticated folder structure,
mm,
repo structure. That is my market research, is
mm,
my sales, my engagement, my manage all my events, all my talks at events. My CRM is just a list of YAML files that
mm,
I maintain for a lot of folks. I don't, not all my emails are AI generated, but many are. Not all my stories are AI generated, but many are.
mm,
And then I do a whole bunch of other things with AI with Claude, that harvesting artifacts, doing my market research, deep
mm,
dive. Like I'm going through Cisco's whole product line right now, and like, what do they offer? What's consistent? What's inconsistent? Because I'm talking to different folks at Cisco about how they do agentic and how their API kind of works for that. So that's my world. I mean, I can go into more detail, but I'm just very YAML, Git, VS Code, Claude focused,
mm.
and I'm spread across APIs.io and API Evangelist GitHub orgs, which are about 30,000 repos. So I'm at a scale that's
Okay.
kind of weird. It's not normal. I don't think it's a normal thing that people do, but I maintain a lot of that. It's possible because of Claude, and that's, I can go into more
Mm.
detail, but that's my world. What's yours look like?
Yeah, so I guess like since about March, I mean, I've really just been mostly using Claude and Claude Code. I do use Claude Chat as well. And occasionally go use ChatGPT, but I have really been trying not to use it. It's just I tend to really stick within Claude. And yeah, it's really since March I've been using it in VS Code. I only have one repo. I'm very like much Fisher Price, my first GitHub account
Yeah.
level. But I've been building, oh, and also building things in Lovable as well. I think really where mine is very much like I kind of outline. I started writing a Substack about it because I just wanted to almost sometimes I think with this it's so fast moving that it's really easy to forget like what have you actually built? What is the structure that you've built? Because I'm just in it all the day. I would probably estimate that I spend 80% of my time that isn't in meetings or team time. Oh, sorry, my WhatsApp's open somewhere. Um, I would anticipate that I spend 80% of time in Claude Code. So, oh, sorry, I've lost my train of thought now because that pinged. Um,
Yeah.
so what,
That's what they're designed. That's what they're
yeah,
designed to do.
exactly. Sorry. Okay, so let me just check I haven't got anything else open. So yeah, I spend about 80% of my day in Claude Code on using VS Code. I then do some work on Claude Chat, but a lot of what I use Claude Chat for is to kind of interrogate what I've done in Claude Code or vice versa. I've used Lovable more personally to build applications, just playing around really. But none of those have actually made it through to get to GitHub in terms of the code base. But yeah, I would say that like most of everything I've got on VS Code is I've got in my repo, apart from some stuff that I've put to like git ignore. And that doesn't just cover Tyke stuff. Obviously, I'm primarily that's my job is working with Tyke, and that's where I'm primarily using a lot of this work. But I do have a company that I do some advisory for, TrustWorks, and I have some personal folders as well. So I just separate them so that they don't all end up, you know, in the same in well, same with the git ignore, making sure that the same
Yeah.
things don't get pulled through. But I'm very much still trying to work out, I guess the next phase for me is trying to work out how we can encourage this level of collaboration with the team because the team, as I think is quite normal, we've got, and not just in marketing, across the business, you've got people, some people are engineers actually building the product, some people work in maybe less traditionally technical um, teams like people or you know finance, although that is drastically quickly changing as well. And I think the collaboration part is that's the next big thing for me to figure out. Like we've already started working on that, like in terms of like creating a product brain, creating a marketing brain that we can all then pull. But I think what I'm noticing is everyone's still doing things differently. So until we get that kind of sense of um, what's the word? Coherence, I guess, against all the tools.
Mhm.
Um, because also what I'm talking about is quite separate to how we've built AI at Tyke in terms of what the engineering team are using, in terms of we've got multiple AI tools, chatbots, etc., that we use internally. So just to also set that out as well, when I'm talking about the marketing setup, that's really what I'm building for my smaller team. So
Yeah.
it's quite separate to the rest. I think then plugging that all together is where I've seen also other people talking recently about those challenges. Just what's the best way of doing that? Obviously, the governance aspect as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the main. But yeah, again, I can kind of talk about the folder structures, or there's some specific tools that I've built, or a lot of prototyping. That's another great
Yeah.
thing I find to use it for. I actually find writing the most, like content creation, I actually find the least valuable for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't, even working a lot on the tone of voice, I don't, I like to consider myself a writer, so I often don't like what comes back. It feels a bit uncanny valley to me. I'm quite
Yeah.
high standards on that. So yeah, I think that's a bit of an overview, but happy to go into anything else in more detail.
Yeah. I mean, I want to start kind of at the ground zero of why VS Code from a marketer's perspective. What was that decision and why? And what's it like for you?
Because I'm stubborn. And I'm sort of like, I can figure out how to do this in an
Yeah.
engineering kind of context. Um, Genuinely, I think though, like I did want to learn how to do it at the sort of harder level. The way I kind of compare it is in the UK, you can learn on a manual car or an automatic when you do a driving test. But if you learn on an
Mhm.
automatic, you can't drive a manual. But if you drive a
Yeah.
manual, you can drive. If you learn how to
Yeah.
drive a manual, you can drive an automatic. So
Yeah.
my kind of way of viewing it was I wanted to be able to drive the car manually and also I'm a big believer in you learn from doing. So I think you have to just give it a go. The biggest way that I taught myself was using Claude Chat. So I had a conversation with someone called Anna Urson, who was super inspirational for me. She's kind of a fractional consultant and she's doing a lot of AI go-to-market. And she basically just showed me what her setup was. And once like, and this is what I was talking about before, like once you can kind of see what's possible, I think immediately you can start like this is the way to you've got a way to figure it out and you know what you're reaching towards. So I just went and asked Claude how to build it in Claude Code, and that led me into VS Code. And so, I mean, I did already have a GitHub account actually, but I just never really used it, never committed any code. And I think, yeah, it was just really a case of teaching me. But I thought that was the best way. I think that's the way it feels to me. Like maybe this is just what I'm projecting onto it, but it feels to me like a lot more control, like a lot more control that I have. I personally find that the when I create a project in Claude Chat, I don't find it as powerful as when I've got the folder sort of there, or I guess in the terminal, reading it in the terminal. And also, I think using the code VS Code version, because you can see the folder structure, I think it helps you visually understand the architecture that's kind of under the hood of Claude Chat or Claude Code, I mean, Claude Cowork especially. To the extent that I actually now really struggle to use Claude Cowork, I find it
Hmm.
harder to get my head around the concepts. Um, and then, yeah, finally, I think just because I had, again, going back to the kind of powerful piece, I think I had a feeling that I would, using Claude Code, I'd be able to build more directly. Like, for example,
Hmm.
I've already built a few tools that I wouldn't, some tools actually that I spec'd out last year when we had more of kind of an AI engineering approach internally. And I was asking one of the team to help me, and they didn't have any time. And now I was able to build it myself. So those are kind of the core reasons why I.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah.
Was that just because of your engineering development background? Is that what led you into just
Yeah, I mean, definitely. But I would say I spent the first 6 months just in Claude Chat, and what unlocked it for me was going to VS Code and being, and
Mm,
exactly what you said was I was able to go to a whole nother level with the folder structure. But then I'm also heavily Git. I've been, API Evangelist has been on
mm,
Git since 2013, 12, and not just for my coding and my open API and artifacts, but the whole site runs there and it runs as many different
yeah.
repos. And so I use GitHub Pages. And so that the combo of VS Code IDE plus Git plus GitHub Pages, it just totally
Mm,
shifted how I was able to use Claude. Because I started when I was building the startup I was building intentionally that, hey, I'm going to hire people. So I created separation of folders and repos because I see GitHub orgs and GitHub repos as just folders. And,
mm, yeah,
GitHub
yeah,
org API Evangelist and GitHub org APIs.io are two different boundaries because API Evangelist is all mine
yeah.
and very selfishly. And then APIs.io I share with Steve Wilmot, who was the CEO of Threescale. So I purposely have two domains there, but they're just two folders within my VS
Mm,
Code. But they're two boundaries that I
yeah.
treat differently. And then repos within that, then I can create public and private repos and I can share with
Mm,
other team members. I can share with other contractors within those two namespaces. And then I build websites. And so I have websites that are separated kind of by boundaries and I can build those out in there. So yeah, the VS Code and Git piece is transformative in my opinion. I really wish there was IDE Lite and Git Lite for marketers and business people
mm,
because I feel like I've tried for years to get people into GitHub and they're just like, no, no,
mm,
and let alone IDEs. I've never been able to get a business person or marketing person into or product person
mm,
into an IDE. So I wish there was a light version that would give people those superpowers because I think they would be very, very welcoming to that.
Product, new startup idea.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's serious because like that it
Yeah,
just
no, I
changes the
agree.
game. It changes it.
Well, yeah, and I think like again, you have to correct me as well because I'm still very much getting up to speed with the Git side of things, but I don't know the way that clicked it for me was really to explain it to the team, especially was around like thinking about GitHub as shared drive and
Mhm.
that kind of mental model
Exactly.
for because rather than think and again going back, I think this is how we got the conversation started actually about talking today, like the idea of seeing code as text or text as code and make once you make that
Yeah.
mental switch, it's like actually anything yeah, of course you can use VS Code. Of course you can use GitHub because it's reading a file and the file's got text in it. Like that text is
Mm,
no different from, why do they call it language? Like language,
yeah,
like what
yeah,
language you're coding in. So I think that's helped the team internally. But I think like I say, the next step is really how we do move to that more collaborative approach because we are still collaborating and we're all using Claude, but we're all using it in different ways still,
yeah,
pointing at different things. And I think that's also where you start to get less of the like the consistency and if for example, boilerplate is a really obvious, boring example, but 500 words about type. Okay, well, we can all have a skill that runs boilerplate, but if it's pointing at what's the different I guess, source code that it's pointing at, you're going to get three different versions of the boilerplate, but they're all going to look
yeah,
like great boilerplate. So
yeah,
I can see that being a problem over time. But yeah, I definitely think for not just marketers, I mean, that's kind of again why I kind of pushed like why I would start to think about writing about what I'm doing because again it just a lot of this is just knowing it's possible and I think once you know it's possible you just need a day or two. I mean, not to keep going, obviously I wish I at the moment I'm sort of in that position where I've got back into the swing of I always see you need to slow down to speed up again. I had some
mhm,
days where I really got into the build of it, then I started being able to use it, and now I'm at the stage where like I need another couple of days just to clear, just to get into the next stage of the build.
yeah,
That's where I'm at right now. But I think
yeah,
that's all that marketers or other kind of non-technical team members need to know really is that you can figure this out. It's not, it looks intimidating, I think, right? If you haven't seen VS Code before and you haven't seen, but if yeah, it's not as intimidating as it looks.
yeah. No, I think that intimidation factor that I like what you said about it's just text, and I've been trying to teach that to people
Yeah.
about Git for years. Is it's not necessarily it's a social network for text is all it really is,
Mm.
and it allows you to version control and have that social network. And that's if we teach people that, I think it would be super powerful. Now, how you segment out the folder structure, I'm of the camp where there is no right way. I know there's a lot of people who love, coming from the REST API world, like there's a right way and clean and there's all these infographics on
Mm.
LinkedIn floating around. Here's how you do your
Yeah.
markdown files in your folder structures and I'm like, cool, like share your way, share the gospel that you believe in. But I think people need to know that your way is probably the right way, and you pay attention to the stories of other people. And that's why I thought it's so cool that you're sharing the story of this. And I'd like to share more of how I use mine
Mm.
is just learn from other people, but develop your
Mm.
own way, build your own muscle, build your own folder structure, how you organize files, how you create different repos, how you create different orgs, how you create private and public. Who you give permissions to. You can say you have read access, you have write access. You can really control who has access to things. And coming from the API world, smaller is better. Like, well, okay, no, I'll back up because mono repo or microservices, is a classic war in the API space.
Mm.
Do you just have
Mm.
one repo with all your folder structures, or do you have many
Yeah,
repos
yeah,
with
yeah.
and it depends on your style. And I like micro because you can give access to different people, different levels of granularity on a repo. Now, then you have to manage that at scale.
Mm.
And so that requires you having some sort of consistent folder structure. But then you mentioned in there skills, is like that's
Mm.
another layer of this is how do you develop skills that help you manage those things and then regroup and refine? Because like right now, I just had Claude go through all of my repos and all of my folders and make suggestions on how to clean it up. Because I
Yeah, so did
have,
I actually.
and because it's just, you're moving so far, so fast. It's
Yeah.
a, it's a freaking mess, and I don't always have the time to stop. And so I said, hey, like my computer is super hot sometimes because I leave it going all night doing things and I'm like worried, oh, my computer's gonna die. So like, hey, can you help me make sure everything's in a Git repo, everything's committed,
Mm.
and then can you write me a skill that will like recreate it on a new machine when I get a new machine because I'm really worried about it because I have all my podcasts, I have all my every
Yeah.
marketing project that I'm doing is on here. And so I just look for Claude to help you with that, and then keep refining, but move and do, and figure out what works for you, and don't feel like, there's any religion to kind of own it, so.
Yeah. No, especially not at the moment where it's everything's so in flux. But yeah, I one of the things that Anna taught me, which was really helpful, was this idea of having a trust hierarchy. So it's not
Mhm.
actually a skill. I think it's a context file. I'm just looking at where it sits. It sits across my whole folder structure, and I might have a separate type specific one. But basically, what that is so basically, I don't know if you've got a similar thing, but it will basically say it says in the folder structure like how to measure which sources are accurate and how to treat them.
Mm,
So what do you give the highest relevance to? What's like so again like tier one, well, tier zero is my own created assets and my voice, my lived experience, my own data, anything I've actually created. I guess more like my kind of brain. Then you've got like first direct and first order data, any analysis, summaries and self-assessments. And then I thought actually I might have put it in at a different layer, but there was something around AI generated um,
mhm,
research or content, which I believe is classed as tier three, but for some reason it's not in here. Um, but it then has rules for like what do you do if you're not entirely sure where something fits. And so it will say to me, you have to check this, or it will say you don't have a source for this, or yeah, do you have any other data that you can add to, but like that we can look at it alongside this? And that's something that Anna showed to me that she did, and I find that really useful because it just gives me that ability to know that. I mean, again, I think when you're using AI, you have to always use your brain. You have to engage brain as you're using it to check to see what it's coming back with. But I think this is just a helpful flag.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
really
No,
strong.
I don't have anything like this for my
Mhm.
marketing or content. I have it for what I harvest from the public sphere. I have a whole rating system and quality scoring and tiers, but this is super helpful. I hadn't thought about applying it to my what I'm producing, because this
Yeah, I
is
can send it. I
valuable.
can send it across as an MD file.
Yes, please.
And I think there's a few others I can't think off the top of my head right now, but a couple of other rules and regs, I guess, just in terms of like again, another one is about recency. So after a certain number of days, I've actually started getting it the last few days, and as you were kind of referring to, I've sort of ignored it for the last few days because I just haven't had time to look at it. But it's like this data hasn't been updated in 90 days, so like go and have a look at it.
Hmm.
And another thing as well is building in like some front matter where it always has the date that you last edited. You always update the
Hmm.
date and time
Yep.
that you last edited the sheet and um, confidence in the page. Like how
Yep.
confident are you with that, especially where it's data? So those are the things that off the top of my head, often as well, what I tend to do is like when I've figured out how to do something, I will create like a blog post or a some sort of file that tells me how I did this, like what was my thinking process, how do we
Yeah.
go through?
Yeah.
Because again, like obviously I'm relying this, I do find that this folder structure, um it helps me like I can kind of it tends to have a good, I guess like I mean it's a lot more powerful in terms of looking through what you've discussed before and like telling you, but obviously that uses a lot of tokens. So is there, if I want to just go back and pick something back up again, or if it's been a few months and I'm like,
Yep.
how did I build this tool? I'll always have again in the README, I guess, like how the tool was built, what I thought about it, and then if I want to go into Claude Chat to ask some questions to find, I can always use that like kind of fake blog post to
Yeah.
give it the context.
Yeah.
That's the part I feel like might get more unwieldy the more that I do this, it's creating more and more content to
Yeah.
be hosted. But for the time being, that's working quite well for me.
And I think, from experience, like if you just keep refining and restructuring and cleaning that, whether it's quarterly, you have annual spring
Mm,
cleaning. And I speak from experience on this, is what you just described is like what API Evangelist has always been for me.
yeah.
Is like you saw it back in the day. I mean, even pre-AI, I was writing 3 to 5 blog posts a
Yeah, yeah,
day
yeah.
and just churning, and it was just my stream of consciousness. And then I would, in 8 months, I'd go, wait, there's that one company I looked at, what, and I'd go search on my blog, and there it was. And it was like, oh yeah, exactly what I thought about it and
Yeah.
why it worked. And so I've retooled a lot of that, and I have these, and I think sharing what these files are, because I don't think there's a canonical set of files everyone should use. I think there's all these MDs out there. And different platforms use them in different
Yeah,
ways. Claude.md, memory.md, and so
yeah,
trust all of these. And then there's like soul MD. I had one friend who has a soul. It's like, what's the
yeah.
soul of? And I have a similar one that's because I'm fortunate enough, I trained my core content creation on 10
Mm.
year or 16
Yeah,
years
yeah,
of
yeah,
blog posts. And
yeah.
so it speaks like Kin Lane, like it, and it even curses and even like does some really weird things. Like I'm like, do I do that? Like, oh, okay. And so like I had to kind of tone it down, and I have a personality file that for writing content and writing site copy and stuff like that. That's in it. Write it as Kin, and it'll do it. And then now I have my Kin score, which is like
That's
rates APIs based upon Kin's personality,
cool.
and like totally goes like, oh, this API sucks. I wouldn't accept it. And if you submit an API on apis.io, there's this little secret file it produces and gives to me, and I read it and go, I wouldn't take this API. It's bad. And it just totally like convinces me how
That's
what
really
crap
cool.
it is.
I
So
was gonna say,
I
you
think
could expose that and you get people to use it as a service. Like, is this
I'm
really or
work
not?
that's I'm working on it. That's what I'm doing right now. That's my
Yeah,
next business
cool.
model. I don't know how I'm going to make money with it, but I'm working on it. So, but
Yeah, no, that's cool.
yeah. I mean, this is all I really wanted. I mean, I'm sure we could keep talking, but this is all I just wanted was a little peek behind the curtain as far as what you're doing content wise. And then you're welcome to come back anytime as you keep evolving. Or but what I'd like to do out of this is I'll publish it to conversations.api evangelist. But I'll probably create a story or two out of it, because I think
Yeah.
just your trust file is pretty compelling. I think your VS Code and Git usage
Mhm.
is inspiring, and I think other people got to be brave and kind of fearless to just go, okay, I'm gonna jump over this line, you know.
Do you feel like, do you feel like from conversations you've had, or do you feel like this is something that marketers are or non-technical people are using? Because I feel like the classic thing with this, I think, is you don't know what you don't know. And so I can talk to
Yeah,
one person and feel like, oh, I really have something to to share with them that might help them. And then other times I feel like, I spoke to someone yesterday and like I said, they're using Claude Code in a totally different way. And it really kind of blew my mind. And it's just different. It's not, but it's almost like, again, you see another layer and you're like, oh my God, I thought everything I was doing was
yeah,
like, kind of keeping up with the trends, but actually I'm really far behind. So
yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, do you think this is something that people have appetite for and something that people they're
I
trying to
think
get on
so.
board with?
I think so, and but I fear that people are going in through commercial front doors, like
Mm,
Lovable, and which, don't get me wrong,
yeah,
like these apps are great. They'll get you a long ways, but they're also venture-backed startups that are,
yeah.
will railroad you. And like I got my wife to use GitHub starting in 2015, and she's a writer, and she maintains all of her sites, and she maintains all of her data in YAML and Git repos, and she has
Mm,
for like a decade. And
mm,
she finds it very useful for recalling and doing things. And so I think everybody is kind of in this search mode. I think it's branded as vibe coding in a lot of ways.
yeah.
And then and like you said, there's all these kind of overarching currents and waves where people are being shamed because A, you're using AI, or B, you're using AI for the wrong thing, or you're vibe coding, and I think there's a lot of everybody's just searching right now, trying to figure out
Mm,
what is this thing? How can I use it? I have to use it. That's the most I'm hearing is people are mandated to use it and they didn't really want to, and they don't have the training or education. They're just like, hey, you've got to use this mandate, and there isn't a lot of guidance or standardization. They come across the rock stars who are like, I'm doing this and this, and it's like blows their mind, but like, well, that I can't even figure that out. And then they got other people who aren't, are pretty pretty low level and just barely using it and just still in the chat. Some are on chat GPT layers. So I think everyone's trying to figure this out. I don't think there's enough sharing because people are very insecure about their levels
Yeah.
and their understanding. And then the shaming factor is, nobody shames me because I'm grumpy and mean and I've yelled at people for enough years. People leave me alone, but I'm just trying to figure it out, make
Yeah.
sense of it. I don't know what the hell, and I don't know the right way. And I just think people have an appetite for, yeah, I think people want more sharing, but they're afraid to do it. So,
Yeah, I find it really curious because there was like something I posted about a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw it, but I just got on a bit of a soapbox, and it was about how suddenly, with the Clay AI writing statement about not wanting, like basically you can't just leave your judgment at the door when you create content with AI. There's a lot of massive amounts of content being created and then passed to someone else for review. And when you read that piece of content, it's clear the person who generated it hasn't actually read it. And I think the term is like you're becoming like a meat proxy, basically, just
mhm.
outsourcing
Yeah,
your intelligence, which I'm minded to agree with, even though even as I've definitely been guilty of it on occasion. Um, but then and there was that, and there was also the whole AI Act in the EU around watermarking AI generated text.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just saw a wave of people on LinkedIn just suddenly say, "Oh, of course I've been using AI to write. Like obviously I
yeah,
have." And
yeah,
to me, it's like I just dashed off this post completely human written because I just was like so kind of annoyed about it. And some people I think in the comments took it as like me, even though I said in the post I wasn't trying to call anyone out. I think some
mhm,
people did take it as me trying to call out people that use AI. But it's more like I just don't understand this kind of some people are trying to, I think a lot of people because of insecurity are trying to almost both sides it, where
yeah,
why not just share that you're using it?
yeah,
And there
yeah,
has to be something behind that as to why we're not.
yeah,
Because if you're then turning, like you say, it's like you're kind of like we're kind of not people are feeling like persecuted if they use AI, persecuted if they don't use AI, or called out. That's a better word. But it's like I'm more interested in why do we feel like we're creating these rules and etiquette around AI as we're using it. And like you say, I think people are using it, they are playing around with it, but no one's actually sharing how,
yeah,
unless it's kind of like I did this thing, which is like, I 10x my inbound by the kind of slightly snake oil salesman vibes.
yeah,
It feels like there's
yeah,
nothing in between. So yeah, I
yeah.
think
I think that's
it's
kind of behind why I wanted to talk to you and reach out to you
mm,
is filling in that middle gap. And I put a banner at the top of API Evangelist that's like on every page and it says, here's how I use API AI, excuse me,
yeah.
AI and why. And because I wanted to be this fill this middle ground. And I'm my wife is 100% anti-AI. She's in education
Mm,
and like she's been working with the Pope. She's been cited and been talking with the Vatican about
wow.
anti-AI stuff. She's been
Mm,
going to all these Catholic schools and talking about anti how your soul's in jeopardy. So she's like 100% anti-AI. And then
mm,
I'm like, oh, my career is 100% AI. So like I agree this we need this middle ground. And my response to what you said is the splitting of and dividing of people is a subset of the labor implications of AI, and
good
I don't
point.
think we should fall for it because it's like poor white people and poor black people and poor brown
Mm,
people keep them all divided so that they don't work
They hate each
together
other.
to like overthrow the upper class. It's like keep everyone fighting and squabbling, and that's why you're seeing LinkedIn, Substack, all of these put the report AI kind of
Mm,
thing. They want us divided. And so I'm all for filling in the middle ground, being honest. Like we're being forced to do this. I'm 100% anti, but I'm
mm,
100% using. It's like total conundrum. Um, I I I would rather have a marketing team that's like a rock star, 3 or 4 people, and we chat every day and talk, and we do things handcrafted, artisanal, organic. But I'm a one-person show, barely making a living. Here's what I've got to do. Most of the people I know are just trying to keep their jobs in the US so they can keep their
yeah.
health insurance and pay their mortgage,
Cool.
and they got to use AI. So, like, I'm not about to shame anybody and call out, and
Mm.
I want to share. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel exactly, it's so interesting you say it because I also put an AI disclosure thing on my when I started the blog because I have a personal Substack, which I don't ever want to use AI for, because I think for me, like the reason I write is
Yeah.
different to the reason I use AI.
Amen.
Yeah, it's like the actual act of writing is what helps you figure something out. It changes something in you as well as whatever it is that you've now created. And frankly, also selfishly, like I'm writing a novel at the moment, and when I submit it to agents or publishers, I don't want there to be any fear that I've used AI to write that novel, because I can tell
Yeah.
you, I've
Yeah.
like that's been blood, sweat, and tears, and I haven't finished it
Yeah.
yet. So that is a concern for me, selfishly, but also just generally, yeah, I do think we run the risk of. I found it harder to write creatively since I've got really into
Yeah.
AI.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
harder.
I'm the same. KinLane.com is 100% me, 100,
Mm,
and it's got way fewer posts. And
yeah,
then I have a personal newsletter I send to, and I haven't sent it in the last 2 weeks because I'm, as my wife says, you're in the Claude mines, working,
yeah.
and then see, I'm like doing the thing. So like I agree, and I'm working on a science fiction piece right now too, and
Oh, cool.
I'm actually finding balance between the two worlds, writing, spending half my day writing words
Mm,
and just in Notepad, and I don't use tech. But then switching to Claude, and I find it kind of nourishing to be in both worlds and keep my paycheck, but write something that is inspirational, so
yeah. Yeah, I kind of have to do it first thing in the morning now, because it's sort of before my brain gets sort of infected by. And again, it's like, this is what I mean. It's like, I'm not completely against AI, but I am very, very, very conflicted. But I am using it, and I have sort of taken the AI pill to some extent. But I do think there is, my other worry is, I think that there's a fear that it blocks us from our own intuition and our own deep
yeah,
knowledge and wisdom that we have, because
yeah,
we're outsourcing a lot of our decision making
yeah,
to
it's
to
true.
AI. Yeah, and I
Well,
think
it's
sorry.
no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, when you've like I've been working for like 15 plus years, I think at least we've had experience of using our own brains extensively, but I do worry a bit about like my partner's kids. They're going into uni, and how are they gonna hope, how can we encourage them to still develop their critical thinking skills and reading for pleasure, as well as for just to like
Amen.
discern like information, like scannability of a text, etc.
Amen.
So yeah, it's scary, but the flip side is I actually get a lot of dopamine from figuring this stuff out as well. So that's the
Yeah,
other like.
yeah. I like it. I
Yeah.
mean, what I was going to say is this isn't just AI for me. Social media and just the internet in
Yeah.
general is has been building towards this moment. It's like I have a lot of issues with social media, and just being online in general, how I feel, like you said, in the day, like if I can spend as much of my day before I get online, I'm in a
Yeah.
better state. Then, because once I'm on, I start spinning at this rate that is like, it doesn't shut off until I go to bed. But then also similarly, I don't stay up. I don't look at my phone once I'm getting ready for bed, or I read a
Mm,
book in the evenings. I turn off the screen, and so, but I have a daughter. I have regrets because she was born in 2000, and I
mm,
very much gave her her own computer, her own cell phone by the time she
mm,
was like 7, 8, her own laptop. I When I divorced her mother, I very much appeased her with letting her be online, and I have a lot of regrets for it.
mm,
But she's come around and found her own space. She's now at University of Washington, library sciences master's degree, and it's a Microsoft school and library sciences, and her half of the program is informatics and data science, and it's a heavy AI Microsoft funded, and then her half of the school is libraries, museum collections,
mm.
reading books, and she's in on the light side. So I was worried for a while that she was going to be lost to the internet culture and not read books, but now she's found her own way back, and I'm very thankful. So
Great. Well, also that's really positive, because I feel like we're now entering, for everything that it looks like, we're kind of entering the age of the not just the generalist, but of the humanities grad. And as a arts and humanities grad, I'm like, yes, my time is coming.
yes,
Finally.
humanities are so important. It's so everything right now. So
Yeah.
I'm I'm going through the book I'm writing. I'm going through all Ursula Le Guin's.
Oh,
I can't,
cool. Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
see if it can't see it. Oh, there it is. It focused for a little bit, but this is one of her books on always coming home, but it's kind of an ethnography of like a fake world. And so Ursula Le Guin and for my daughter has her minors in anthropology, and so like writing about this moment in tech from a kind of ethnographic kind of um human through a human lens.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm working on right now, is trying to make
Cool.
sense of tech and AI, but from a human perspective. So we'll see what I can
Yeah.
produce.
How far are you through are you writing, is it a first draft? Or I'm just looking up one of her book stories I read recently. Which one was it?
Yeah,
But yeah,
she's
are you partway through a first draft or whereabouts are you
yeah,
with your story?
I have four books or five books that I want to write. And so the first one is I have about 80 chapters kind of crafted. It's very rough. I have all my characters fleshed out and kind of the timeline across the books. But I got to put the meat on the bones now. So I have the bones of not just this book, but the others, and then the starting of the meat. And but you realize like how much backstory of characters you need to even just
Yeah.
write one paragraph. It's like, why would they say this? Why would they say so? You got to like go back in their whole history and do like things that'll never make it in the book, just so you like know that they don't like pizza or they don't like
Yeah.
tomatoes or things like that.
Yeah, I know that pain. I did that for like about I had to do that for like a year. I would not completely, but it took about a year on and off to figure out what I was the story of my like the backstory because mine's like a historical mystery. So I
Mm,
figured out all of the historical mystery, but the actual book when I wrote it, I've got to I'm just starting the rewrite. The it's completely based in the future. It's not actually the future, it's 2008, but then it's almost like now I'm trying to figure out how much of that past do I try and weave back in because in some ways it's more interesting to me than what I've written because it's like all of the it's like a Civil War drama. So it's all what happened, what the
yeah,
story was back then. And sometimes I'm like, have I written the wrong book as a result? But I think you do, like you
yeah,
say, you still need to have that backstory because then that is what creates the motivations or the actions in the present of the story. So
yeah.
yeah, I've still got to figure that out, but I know I feel your pain.
Well, I look forward to reading it when you get through
Yeah,
it. I'm still
likewise.
probably a year or two away. I just know how much work it is, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I look forward to
It's good
reading
though.
it when it comes out.